Right, welcome. Today we're going to get our heads around programming languages and IDEs. This is everything you'll need for your OCR GCSE computer science exam. So let's dive straight in. Okay, let's start with this. Imagine you've just finished writing your program. You click Run, but what's actually going on behind the scenes? What happens next to make your code come to life? Just have a quick ponder on that. Right, so how does the code you've written actually get understood by the computer's brain, the CPU? Well, it's not a direct path. There's a really important step in the middle, and that step is all about translation. Okay, so here's the absolute key thing you need to remember. The CPU, the processor, it only speaks one language, and that's machine code. It's just binary, literally just ones and zeros. So all that high-level code you've written, it's complete gibberish to the CPU until it's been translated. In an exam, you'd want to say something like, a program must be translated into machine code before the CPU can execute its instructions. So, because we need this translation step, it brings us to a new idea. Not all programming languages are the same. We can basically sort them into two big categories, high-level and low-level languages. And as we'll see, there are pros and cons to each. Let's start with high-level languages. These are the languages you're probably using in class, right? They use words that look a lot like English, which makes it way easier for us humans to understand, to write, and, importantly, to find mistakes. And then, on the flip side, you've got low-level languages. Now, these are the total opposite. They're much, much closer to the ones and zeros the computer actually gets. This gives a programmer really fine-tuned control over the hardware, which is why you see them used for things like device drivers, where raw speed and efficiency are everything. So here's a quick summary of those trade-offs. High-level languages, they're easier for us, but they're a bit slower for the machine. Low-level languages, way harder for us to write, but they run incredibly fast. The big takeaway for your exam is this: one isn't better than the other. They're just different tools for different jobs. Okay, so we've established that our high-level code needs to be translated. The software that actually does this job is called a translator. And for your GCSE, you need to know the two main types: compilers and interpreters. First, let's look at the compiler. A compiler's job is to translate your entire program all at once before you run it. It creates a brand new file called an executable. That's a file that can run all by itself, even without the original source code. Think of it like translating a whole book from cover to cover and then handing you the finished translation. Now, an interpreter is completely different. It doesn't do the whole program at once. Instead, it translates and runs your code one line at a time. It's more like a live translator who translates a sentence, then waits for the next one. And this is key. As soon as an interpreter hits an error, the whole program just stops right there. So let's break down those key differences. The compiler translates everything before running, and it gives you that separate executable file. The interpreter translates line by line while the program is running, which is generally slower, and you don't get an executable file at the end. For an exam, a brilliant, concise answer would be, a compiler translates the entire program at once, whereas an interpreter translates it one line at a time. So, you might be wondering, where do you find these compilers and interpreters? Well, they're usually bundled into a bigger piece of software, a kind of programmer's toolkit, and this toolkit has a name: the Integrated Development Environment, or IDE for short. So, what is an IDE? The name pretty much says it all. It integrates a bunch of different development tools into one single program. It's basically your one-stop shop for writing code, testing it, and fixing any problems. Now listen up, because this is a super common mistake people make in exams, and it costs them marks. An IDE is not a programming language. Let me say that again. An IDE is not a language. Python is the language. The software you use to write your Python code, that's the IDE. Please don't get them confused. So what's actually in this programmer's toolkit? Well, you've got a few key things. You've got the code editor, where you type your code, and it often has handy features like coloring your keywords. You've got error diagnostics, which is like a spell check for code, underlining your mistakes in red. And of course, the translator. Your compiler or interpreter is built right in. But one of the most powerful tools is the debugger. Okay, the debugger. This is a real game changer. It's not for finding typos, your syntax errors. It's for hunting down the much trickier logic errors, when your program runs without crashing, but it just doesn't do what you want it to. With a debugger, you can set a breakpoint to pause the code at a certain line. Then you can step through it, one instruction at a time, and watch your variables to see exactly how their values are changing. It's how you pinpoint the exact moment your code goes wrong. Right, let's switch gears a bit and talk about exam technique. Because knowing all this stuff is great, but you've got to be able to answer the questions properly to get the marks. And the most important thing to look at is the command word in the question. And here's the big one, the difference between describe and explain. If a question asks you to describe something, it just wants a fact. What is it? What does it do? Simple. But if it asks you to explain, you have to go a step further. You need to give a reason or a consequence. The magic words are because or so that. For instance, an IDE has error diagnostics so that a programmer can spot syntax errors more easily. That's an explain answer. Nail this and you're on your way to top marks. Okay, let's do a super quick 30-second recap. 1. CPUs only understand machine code, so our code needs a translator. 2. High-level languages are easier for us, low-level are faster for the computer. 3. A compiler translates everything at once into an executable. 4. An interpreter translates and runs code line by line. 5. An IDE is a toolkit for programmers, not a language. And 6. Debugger tools, like breakpoints, are for finding logic errors. Right. Let's see what's stuck. Quick fire revision time. First up, describe one difference between a compiler and an interpreter. Have a think. Okay, next question. And pay attention to the command word here. Explain one advantage of using an IDE. Remember, you need that link word, because or so that. And for the last one, explain why high-level languages are generally easier and faster for a programmer to use. What's the reason? Okay, that covers everything you need to know on this topic. Fantastic work. Keep going over these key terms, practice those exam questions, and all the best.